The gym bag zipper caught on my thumb as I pulled it open, looking for my headphones. 3 a.m, and I couldn't sleep again. Marae lay sprawled across our king-size bed, one arm flung over the space where I should have been, her breathing deep and even. She'd been sleeping better lately. I'd been sleeping worse. The bag smelled wrong. Not the usual mixture of her vanilla perfume and workout sweat, but something sharper. Something that made my stomach tighten with a recognition I didn't want to acknowledge. My fingers found the phone wedged between her water bottle and a protein bar wrapper. Not her regular phone. This one was smaller, cheaper. A burner. The kind you buy at gas stations when you don't want your real number traced. I should have put it back. Should have zipped up the bag, grabbed my headphones from wherever they actually were, and pretended I'd never seen it. But my thumb was already swiping across the screen, and the messages were already there, glowing in the darkness of our garage. Miss you already? Can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. J.A. The transfer went through. Account number 4471, like we discussed. He'll never notice. M. You're brilliant, beautiful. This time next year we'll be sipping wine in Tuscany while he's still trying to figure out where his retirement fund went. J.A. I photographed every message with my regular phone, my hands steady despite the way my chest felt like it was collapsing inward. 18 months of texts, heart emojis mixed with account numbers, pet names, and wire transfer confirmations. J.A. Jace Arnell, our financial advisor. The man I'd trusted with our future, who'd sat in our living room last Christmas, eating Marae's homemade cookies and explaining why our portfolio was underperforming. Market volatility, he'd said. Temporary setbacks. Nothing to worry about. The garage door leading into the house creaked open. Orion? What are you doing out here? I slipped both phones into my pocket and grabbed a random cable from the workbench. Looking for my phone charger. Couldn't sleep. Marae appeared in the doorway, her silk nightgown catching the overhead light. Even at 3 a.m, even with her hair messed from sleep, she was beautiful. Had always been beautiful. It was one of the first things I'd noticed about her 7 years ago at that company mixer. The way she could make a room feel smaller just by walking into it. You've been having trouble sleeping a lot lately, she said, her voice soft with what sounded like concern. Maybe you should see someone about it. Maybe. I held up the cable. Found it. Coming back to bed. She smiled and disappeared back into the house. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close before pulling out the burner phone again. There was a folder labeled Travel Plans with screenshots of flights to Rome, hotel reservations for 2, and a rental car confirmation. All for next month. All paid for with what looked like my money. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it, zipped the bag closed, and went inside. Marae was already asleep again, or pretending to be. I lay beside her in the dark, staring at the ceiling, while my wife of 7 years breathed peacefully next to me. They thought they were so smart. What they didn't know was that I'd been taking classes in forensic accounting for 2 years. The fluorescent lights in classroom 204 hummed like angry wasps. Professor Martinez droned on about asset concealment while I took notes in the margins of my textbook, the same way I had every Tuesday and Thursday night for the past 24 months. Marae thought I was bowling with coworkers, had been telling her friends about my sudden interest in sports and how proud she was that I was finally getting out of the house. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so perfectly calculated. Mr. Vanton, can you walk us through the red flags in shell company formations? I looked up from my notes. Martinez was a retired IRS investigator who'd seen every trick in the book. He had a way of making even the most complex financial crimes sound like simple puzzles waiting to be solved. Multiple companies with similar names, registered to the same address, often with minimal business activity. They exist primarily to move money between accounts without creating obvious paper trails. The key is following the signatures. Most people get lazy with the documentation. Excellent. And what's the most common mistake amateur fraudsters make? They use real relationships, spouses, siblings, business partners. They think family connections make them invisible, but it actually makes them easier to trace once you know what to look for. Martinez nodded approvingly. Around me, my classmates, mostly insurance investigators and small business owners trying to protect themselves, scribbled notes. They had no idea I was taking this class for such personal reasons. After class, I drove to Ty's gym instead of going straight home. The place smelled like sweat and rubber mats, and the sound of gloves hitting heavy bags was better than any meditation app. Ty Castillo had been my friend since high school, back when we were both too skinny and too angry for our own good. Now he owned this place, and I came here whenever I needed to think with my hands instead of my head. You're getting better, he said, watching me work the speed bag. More focused. less like you're trying to beat the thing to pieces. Thanks, I think. How's Marae? I kept my rhythm steady. Ty didn't know about the burner phone, the messages, or the fact that I'd been building a file on my own wife for the past 6 months. She's fine, working a lot. And you're good? I'm learning patience. Ty raised an eyebrow, but didn't push. That was one of the things I'd always liked about him. He knew when to ask questions and when to just let you work through whatever was eating at you. On the drive home, I stopped at the community college library and used their computers to research Jace Arnell's business registration. Public records were beautiful things when you knew how to read them. Arnell Financial Services had been incorporated 3 years ago, right around the time he'd started handling our accounts. The registered address was a strip mall office between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. But the interesting part was the business partners listed on the incorporation documents. 2 shell companies I'd never heard of, both registered to a P.O. box in Delaware. Classic setup for someone who wanted to move money without leaving obvious tracks. I printed everything and added it to the folder I kept in my workshop, hidden behind a stack of old car magazines. 3 months of research so far, and the picture was getting clearer. Jace wasn't just having an affair with my wife, he was using her to steal from me. Using us to steal from other clients too, most likely. When I got home, Marae was in the kitchen, still in her work clothes, heating up leftover takeout. How was bowling? She asked without looking up from her phone. Good, getting better at my form. That's nice. She was texting someone, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. I might be late tomorrow night, client dinner. Anyone I know? Just work people. Boring stuff. I nodded and grabbed a bottle of water from the refrigerator. On the counter, her regular phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it, then at me, then slipped it into her purse. I'm going to shower, she said. Long day. After she went upstairs, I checked the calendar on our shared laptop. No client dinner listed for tomorrow. But there was a note in her personal calendar. J, 8 p.m., Riverside Inn. The Riverside Inn was a motel 20 minutes outside town, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask too many questions about why you paid in cash. I added the information to my file and went to bed. Marae was already asleep, or pretending to be. I lay in the dark, listening to her breathe, and planned my next move. They thought they were so smart, moving money behind my back, covering their tracks with shell companies and fake investment losses. What they didn't know was that I'd been learning their tricks for 2 years, and I was getting very good at being patient. The highlighter squeaked against the bank statement as I traced another suspicious transfer. $1,800 moved from our joint savings to an account I'd never heard of, labeled as investment management fees. The date matched one of Jace's text messages about a successful reallocation. I was sitting in my workshop at 5 in the morning, surrounded by 3 months of financial documents I'd been collecting piece by piece. Bank statements, investment reports, tax returns, insurance policies, everything I could get my hands on without raising suspicion. The pattern was elegant, I had to give them credit. Small amounts moved regularly, never enough to trigger automatic alerts. Phantom investment losses that matched real market downturns, making them nearly impossible to spot unless you were looking specifically for them. Money that disappeared from our accounts and reappeared in places I couldn't track without professional help. But Jace had made mistakes. They always did. The first mistake was using Marae's maiden name for some of the shell company registrations. Marae Solren Holdings, registered in Delaware 3 months after our wedding. The second mistake was the boat, a 30-foot cabin cruiser registered to Jace's sister in Maryland, purchased with a cashier's check that matched the exact amount of our lost technology sector investments from last summer. The third mistake was getting comfortable. The recent transfers were larger, more frequent. They were planning something big. I photographed everything with my phone, uploaded the images to an encrypted cloud account, and filed the physical documents in color-coded binders. Red for confirmed fraud, yellow for suspicious activity, green for legitimate transactions. The red section was getting thick. My phone buzzed with a text from Ty. Gym opens at 6. You coming in? Be there in 20, I replied. I locked everything in my workshop safe, a Christmas gift from Marae 2 years ago, back when she still pretended to care about my hobbies, and grabbed my workout gear. The gym was empty except for Ty and Rita, the woman who ran the juice bar in the front corner. Rita was somewhere in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. She knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it, which made her either the best friend or worst enemy you could have in a town this size. Your wife's been looking good lately, she said as I walked past the counter. Saw her at Nordstrom last weekend buying expensive clothes, Must be nice to have that kind of money. I stopped and turned around. She was shopping? Oh, yes, bags and bags of stuff. Designer everything. Had that financial advisor with her. What's his name? Jace something? They looked very friendly. Rita's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. She knew exactly what she was implying. Thanks for the information, I said. Anytime, honey. I believe people should know what's happening in their own lives. I spent an hour hitting the heavy bag, working through the anger that threatened to overwhelm the careful patience I'd been cultivating. Marae was spending our money on clothes to impress her lover, money she'd helped him steal from our accounts. After my workout, I drove downtown to the strip mall where Jace had his office. The building was exactly what I'd expected. Cheap construction, fluorescent signs, and a parking lot that needed repaving. Arnell Financial Services occupied a corner unit with tinted windows and a door that looked like it belonged on a storage unit. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching. At 8:30, Jace arrived in his BMW, a car that cost more than I made in a year. He was tall, athletic, with the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. The kind of man who probably thought guys like me were invisible. At 9:15, Marae's Honda pulled into the parking lot. She was supposed to be at work, had kissed me goodbye 2 hours ago and told me about her busy day of meetings and conference calls. Instead, she was here, walking into Jace's office like she owned the place. I started my car and drove to the community college library. I had research to do. The Delaware Secretary of State website was a goldmine once you knew how to navigate it. Marae Solren Holdings had been busy. In the past 18 months, the company had received wire transfers totaling over $200,000, money that had disappeared from various investment accounts Jace managed. Our money, along with funds from at least 6 other clients. I printed everything and added it to my files. Then I called Seren Dreven's office and made an appointment for the following week. Seren Dreven was a divorce attorney with a reputation for destroying cheating spouses in high-asset cases. She was expensive, thorough, and had never lost a case involving financial fraud. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. When I got home that evening, Marae was in the kitchen, cooking dinner and humming to herself. She looked happy, relaxed, like someone who'd had a very good day. How was work? I asked. Busy but productive. How about you? Same, just the usual. She smiled and kissed my cheek. I love you, you know that? I know, I said, and went to wash my hands. What she didn't know was that I'd found the real estate purchases. A condo in Florida, bought 6 months ago with money from our retirement accounts. A vacation rental property in the mountains, purchased under one of Jace's shell companies but managed by Marae Solren Holdings. They weren't just stealing from me. They were building a life together with my money. But they'd made one critical error. They'd underestimated the man they were stealing from. I was going to show them exactly how expensive that mistake would be. The binder ring snapped closed with a sound like handcuffs clicking shut. 3 binders now, color-coded and organized with the precision of a federal investigation. 18 months of forensic accounting classes had taught me to think like an auditor, and auditors loved documentation. Seren Dreven's office occupied the top floor of a downtown building that screamed expensive legal services. Glass walls, leather furniture, and a view of the city that probably cost more per month than most people's mortgages. The receptionist led me to a conference room where Seren was waiting with a cup of coffee and a legal pad. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of intense focus that made you understand why she'd never lost a case. Mr. Vanton, I've reviewed the preliminary documents you sent. This is quite impressive work. I slid the 3 binders across the table. This is everything. Financial records, communication logs, asset transfers, shell company registrations, color-coded by evidence strength. Seren opened the red binder and whistled softly. How long have you known about the affair? 6 months, but I've been documenting the financial fraud for 3 months. The affair started about 18 months ago, 6 months before the first suspicious transfer. And you've been taking forensic accounting classes? 2 years, Tuesday and Thursday nights. My wife thinks I've been bowling. Seren's smile was sharp and predatory. Mr. Vanton, in 20 years of practice, I've never seen a client come this prepared. Your wife and Mr. Arnell have made some very expensive mistakes. She flipped through the documentation, stopping occasionally to make notes. Shell companies using her maiden name, real estate purchases with marital assets, wire transfers to accounts she co-signed. This isn't just adultery, it's systematic theft. What are my options? Complete financial devastation, she said matter-of-factly. For both of them. We file for divorce with a motion for emergency asset preservation, then refer the financial crimes to both the SEC and the state attorney general. Mr. Arnell will lose his license and face federal charges. Your wife will be lucky if she doesn't face criminal prosecution herself. How long? I can have the papers ready by tomorrow morning. We serve them simultaneously, her at work, him at his office. Maximum impact. No time to hide assets or coordinate their stories. I thought about Marae humming in the kitchen last night, planning her future with stolen money. About Jace in his expensive car, thinking he was smarter than the blue-collar husband he was robbing. Do it. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had changed. Sat through meetings, answered emails, made small talk with coworkers who had no idea their colleague was about to become the center of the biggest financial scandal the town had seen in years. At exactly 2 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Seren. Packages delivered. Marae called 20 minutes later. I was in my office, pretending to review shipping manifests, when her name appeared on my screen. Orion? Her voice was shaking. I need to come home. Something's happened. What's wrong? I can't talk about it over the phone. Please can you meet me at home? I'll be there in an hour. The drive home felt like the longest of my life. 2 years of patience, 6 months of investigation, 3 months of documentation, all leading to this moment. Marae's car was already in the driveway when I arrived. I found her in the living room, still in her work clothes, holding a manila envelope and crying. They served me at work, she said without looking up. In front of everyone. Security escorted me out. I sat down across from her, in the chair where Jace had eaten Christmas cookies and explained why our investments were underperforming. Served you with what? Divorce papers, and other things. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. How long have you known? About the affair, 6 months. About the money, 3 months. The money? I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the screenshots I'd taken from her burner phone. Her face went white. Orion, I can explain. Marae Solren Holdings, registered in Delaware. $200,000 in wire transfers from client accounts that Jace manages. Real estate purchases in Florida and Colorado. A boat registered to his sister. She was shaking now, the envelope trembling in her hands. You've been investigating me. I've been taking forensic accounting classes for 2 years. Tuesday and Thursday nights. You thought I was bowling. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Outside, a neighbor was mowing their lawn, the sound normal and peaceful and completely at odds with the destruction happening in our living room. What happens now? She whispered. Now you call a lawyer. A good one. Because the SEC is going to want to talk to you about those wire transfers, and the state attorney general is going to want to know about the shell companies. My phone rang. Seren's name on the screen. Mr. Arnell has been arrested, she said without preamble. Wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy. His office is being searched by federal agents as we speak. And my wife? She's not in custody yet, but I'd recommend she cooperate fully with the investigation. The evidence you've provided makes this case airtight. I hung up and looked at Marae. She was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. You planned this, she said. All of it. I documented it. You and Jace planned it. She stood up suddenly, the envelope falling to the floor. You can't do this to me. I'm your wife. You were my wife. Now you're a defendant. The coffee steam from my mug curled up between us as I sat at the kitchen table the next morning, reading the newspaper coverage of Jace's arrest. Local financial advisor charged with defrauding clients. His photo on the front page looking shocked and defeated. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been for months. Marae had packed a bag and left to stay with her mother, and for the first time in years, the silence felt chosen rather than imposed. My phone buzzed with a message from Ty. Saw the news. You okay? Better than okay, I replied. Much better. The gym was nearly empty at 6 in the morning, just me and the heavy bag and the sound of my gloves connecting with leather. Each punch felt like punctuation at the end of a very long sentence I'd been writing for 6 months. Ty was setting up equipment for the day, occasionally glancing over to make sure I wasn't going to beat the bag to pieces. You're hitting different, he said during my water break. More controlled. I feel different. The news said they arrested your financial advisor. That must have been a shock. I took a long drink of water and considered how much to tell him. Ty had been my friend for 20 years, but some stories were too complicated for casual conversation. Turns out he was stealing from his clients, including me. Damn, how much? Enough to matter, but I'll get it back. Most of it anyway. What I didn't tell him was that Marae had called me 17 times since yesterday, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. Or that Jace's lawyer had already reached out to Seren, asking about a plea deal, or that the FBI had seized the boat, the Florida condo, and frozen all the accounts connected to Marae Solren Holdings. The dominoes were falling exactly as I'd planned. My phone buzzed with a text from Rita at the juice bar. Heard about your wife. If you need to talk, I'm here. Also, that financial advisor came by last night looking for you. Seemed upset. I showed the message to Ty, who frowned. Jace Arnell was here. When? Must have been after I left yesterday. Rita says he was looking for me. Guy's got balls, I'll give him that. Coming here after being arrested for fraud. What did he want? To talk, apparently. Rita told him you weren't here and he should probably leave. He didn't argue. I finished my workout and drove downtown to meet with Serene. Her office felt different today, less like a consultation and more like a war room. The conference table was covered with documents, and she had that predatory smile that meant bad news for someone who wasn't her client. Your wife's attorney called this morning, she said without preamble. They want to negotiate. What kind of negotiation? Full cooperation with the federal investigation in exchange for immunity from prosecution. She gives them everything about Jace's operation, and they don't charge her as a co-conspirator. What does that mean for the divorce? She waives all claims to marital assets, accepts responsibility for the fraud, and walks away with whatever she brought into the marriage. Essentially nothing. I thought about the woman who'd kissed me goodbye every morning for 7 years, who'd made Christmas cookies for the man who was helping her rob me blind. And if she doesn't cooperate? Federal prison. Wire fraud carries a 20-year maximum sentence, and she's documented as a co-conspirator on dozens of transfers. What do you recommend? Let her cooperate. We get our money back, she stays out of prison, and you move on with your life. Clean break, no loose ends. That afternoon, I was in my workshop organizing files when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Jace's BMW. Apparently the FBI hadn't seized it yet. He was out on bail, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and his usually perfect hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it. He knocked on the front door, waited, then walked around to the garage. Orion, I know you're in there. We need to talk. I opened the workshop door and stepped outside. He looked smaller than I remembered, less confident. Desperation had a way of shrinking people. What do you want, Jace? To explain. To apologize. This whole thing got out of hand? Which part? The part where you were having an affair with my wife, or the part where you were stealing my money? He ran his hands through his hair again. Look, I know how this looks, but it wasn't supposed to happen this way. Marae and I, we fell in love. The money thing was just supposed to be temporary, until we could figure out how to be together without destroying everyone's lives. So you decided to destroy my life instead. We were going to pay it back, all of it, once we got settled, once we could access some other funds. Other stolen funds? He flinched. It's not that simple. You don't understand the pressure I was under, the expectations. My clients wanted returns I couldn't deliver legitimately, so I had to get creative. Creative? That's what we're calling theft now? I never meant for you to get hurt. Marae said you wouldn't notice, that you never paid attention to the finances anyway. The casual dismissal hit harder than I'd expected. To them, I'd been invisible, too stupid to notice, too trusting to question, too insignificant to matter. You're right, I said. I didn't pay attention, but then I started taking classes. Classes? Forensic accounting, Tuesday and Thursday nights for 2 years, while my wife thought I was bowling. The color drained from his face. You've been investigating us for 2 years? Learning how to investigate you for 2 years. Actually doing it for 6 months. Jesus Christ, Orion. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've got clients, employees, people who depend on me. People you were stealing from. It wasn't supposed to end like this. How was it supposed to end, Jace? You and Marae riding off into the sunset with my retirement fund? He looked around the garage, at my workbench and tools and the life he'd tried to steal from me. I could make this right. There are ways to fix this without destroying everything. I know people. I have connections. The FBI seized your boat yesterday, and the condo in Florida, and all the accounts connected to Marae's shell companies. How do you know about the boat? I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos I'd taken of the registration documents 3 months ago. His face went completely white. You documented everything. Everything. Every transfer, every shell company, every forged signature, color-coded and cross-referenced. He leaned against his car, looking like he might be sick. Why? He said finally. Why go to all this trouble? You could have just confronted us, demanded the money back. We would have worked something out. Because you thought I was stupid, both of you. You thought I'd never notice, never care enough to fight back. And now? Now you're going to prison. Marae's going to lose everything, and I'm going to get my money back. He straightened up and for a moment I saw a flash of the arrogance that had made him think he could steal from me in the first place. You think you've won. You think destroying us makes you some kind of hero. You're still the same pathetic loser you always were, Orion. The only difference is now you're a pathetic loser with a spreadsheet. I stepped closer to him, close enough to see the fear behind the bravado. The difference, Jace, is that this pathetic loser just took down a man who thought he was untouchable, and I did it with patience, documentation, and 2 years of night school. He got back in his car without another word and drove away. I never saw him again. 3 days later, Marae signed the cooperation agreement. The house was quiet when she came to pick up the rest of her things, and we barely spoke. She looked older, smaller, like someone who'd lost more than just money and a marriage. I never meant for it to go this far, she said as she loaded boxes into her car. I know. Do you hate me? I thought about the question for a long time. No, but I don't love you anymore either. She nodded and drove away, leaving me alone in the house we'd shared for 7 years. That evening, I sat in my workshop with a cup of coffee, looking at the files that had consumed my life for 6 months. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of rebuilding. New investment advisor, new bank accounts, new life. But tonight, I just sat in the quiet and let myself feel the satisfaction of a job well done. They'd thought they were so smart, moving money behind my back. What they didn't know was that I'd been learning their tricks for 2 years. When the divorce came, I presented spreadsheets that made both of them cry. She got nothing, he got investigated, and I got my life back.